Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. You're watching On Land in Kenya and I am Solomon Wangwe. Today I want to tackle the issue of riparian land. I'm sure we've all seen reports in the news, in the media, about properties getting demolished because they are located on riparian land. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So first things first, what is riparian or riparian land? According to the dictionary, it's any space located on the bank of a river or any body of water. So it could be a lake or the ocean as well. So we're literally speaking about that river bank or ocean front or lakefront. That little piece of space is what is generally referred to as riparian. How large that space is dependent on what legal jurisdiction you're in. Different countries have different specifications for what that area is. In Kenya, that varies depending on whether or not you're on the ocean or a lakefront or a river. So for purposes of discussing what's been happening in Nairobi recently, in places like Kileleshwa, and properties getting demolished because they are located on riparian land, that means they are located in a particular zone that's supposed to be reserved, untouched, undeveloped, to allow for the ebb and flow, if you will, of the water's edges during heavy rainy seasons, to allow for proper drainage and to avoid clogging of waterways, which could cause damage and flooding further upstream, as we've seen many times before, especially in places like Kileleshwa and South Sea and these kinds of places. So just to define, and hopefully we can get some reference for you to view on our website or our YouTube channel. There's a very specific formula used for this when it relates to rivers. And that basically says that your riparian space should be at least, I believe, 6 meters in width on either side of the river or the water body. And we're talking about flowing waterways, at least 6 meters wide. So if the river is only 3 meters in width, you have to have at least 6 meters on either side, and that's referred to as the riparian space. Now, if the river happens to be, say, 6 meters wide, your riparian will also still be 6 meters because it's a minimum. And how they come upon that number or come up with the number 6 meters has to do with it being an exact match to the waterway's width. So we're looking at a minimum of 6. In case the river is narrower than 6 meters in width, you still have to have 6 meters on either side. If the river is 6 meters, you still have 6 meters. If the river happens to be, say, 10, 15 meters in width, then you have to give up that same width on either side. So 10 meters or 15 meters in width on either side of the river. But the maximum is 30 meters. So if your river happens to be 60 meters wide, as we have some rivers in certain parts of the country, then you have to leave at a maximum of 30 meters on either side of the river. So just to quickly recap that, we're looking at an equal measure of the width of the river on either side of the river is what is defined as riparian or riparian as a minimum number, regardless of how narrow the river is. But then we have a maximum which is 30 meters. Even if the river is 50 meters or 60 meters in width or 40 meters, they have a maximum of 30 meters. I hope that makes sense. That's important because if you're at the ocean front or the lakefront, as we are at Elementaita, that number can be dramatically higher for obvious reasons. At the coast, for example, on the Indian Ocean coast, which we have in Kenya, some zones will have up to 100 meters in riparian, depending on the gradient of the land that joins the ocean. If it's on a cliff, obviously that is a different story. So you have to do your homework, ask the experts. The best person to ask around this is supposed to be a licensed surveyor I use the word license because many surveyors out there are not licensed. They simply operate under someone else's license. You're much better off dealing with a guy who actually has a license. Ask them to give you guidance. These are stipulated in law. In fact, there are documents you can ask your advocate, licensed advocate of the High Court, to reference for you regarding what the stipulation is, and you'll be safe. And you won't have to worry about your apartment building or commercial block or residential building or even agricultural piece of land getting swept away by water, or, as we've seen in Nairobi, getting demolished after the fact because you didn't do your homework. Many of you are wondering, what's up? Didn't the developer know that they were building on riparian land? What happens in that instance if they sold the space to someone else, either for residential purposes or commercial purposes, if it's an office, like we saw in Taj Mall this week? What's the recourse? That's a very difficult question to answer. Obviously, I wasn't present when these transactions were made, but having some experience with these kinds of things, I can guess, for the most part, what tends to happen is people don't do their homework, especially the land or space buyers. If you're going to purchase a property, as we've shared before in some of our videos, one of the critical things you need to do as part of your due diligence is hire a licensed surveyor to do a survey for you of the space. Assuming that the property seller or owner has provided you the necessary documents to check, your surveyor will be able to tell you what your boundaries are, their measurements, and whether or not any of that property is situated on riparian land, and therefore what reserve must you leave in place to avoid some of the problems we've witnessed this week. A lot of people I've met who buy property never follow this process. Many don't even know that you're supposed to do a survey, or maybe they don't think it's necessary. Obviously, we've seen that it is, and you're better off being sure in advance instead of getting surprised later. Now, if you happen to know that it's riparian land and you simply ignored the stipulation and built on the space, hoping that the authorities never catch up with you, especially if you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to sell it to someone else, it's going to be their problem. That's a horrible thing to do. It's immoral and could probably be proven in court that it's illegal, and action could be taken against you, either to make compensation, or in some cases you simply have to suffer the losses, as I'm sure we'll see with what's happening in Nairobi. So again, you want to make sure you hire professionals to help you with this process. Do not skip any step in your due diligence. Ask the right questions. Do your homework. You have to read, you have to learn, know what the law says. After all, you're sinking your precious financial resources in purchasing this asset, whether it's a completed building or whether it's just a land before you've built on it or before someone else comes to build on it. I hope that's clear. Tons of videos we've done about this. Ask your lawyers and work with licensed surveyors. If you have any more questions or comments to make about this issue, please feel free to reach out to us through our social media platforms. Send us an email, even give us a call. You can find us at 0700010001. Again, that's 0700010001. We'll be happy to hear from you. You're watching Own Land in Kenya, and I'm Solomon Wangwe. Stay tuned for more information on strategic land investment.